After World War II, all the car companies were stuck building their pre-war designs, but Buick had a built-in advantage. Hi there, Rick DeBrule with another chapter in the automotive evolution. Once again, I'm here at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix. It's a great collection of more than 170 cars, each one telling a different chapter of the automotive evolution. And this 1948 Buick right here is right at the tipping point of automotive history. And while it could have been forgotten, hot rodders have kept this alive. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But first, make sure you like and subscribe. And in the comments down below, let me know what I got right, of course, what I got wrong, there's always something, and whether you have any stories about a 1948 Buick just like this one. Now, before I talk too much about this particular car, let's do a very quick history lesson about Buick. It was founded in 1899 by Scottish-born engineer David Dunbar Buick in Detroit, Michigan. Officially, it was incorporated as the Buick Motor Company in 1903. The next year, it produced its first car, the Model B. Buick was initially focused on building reliable, innovative engines. And in fact, pretty quickly, it became known for those engines, those overhead valve 4-cylinders, which were more efficient and powerful than a lot of the competitors were offering at the time. In 1908, Buick became the cornerstone of General Motors when William C. Durant used the Buick brand to form his new corporation. Now, throughout the 1910s and the 1920s, Buick gained a reputation for luxury, durability, engineering innovation, offering cars that were more refined than a lot of the mass market vehicles. Fast forward to 1948. Now, by now, most people know the story of how civilian auto production shut down during World War II. And when they started building again after the war, it was really just recycled pre-war designs. And while you could say this 48 Buick was just a warmed over pre-war styling, this car had one big advantage. You see, Buick had introduced new streamlined styling in 1942, right before production shut down. So when everyone else was building their post-war cars that looked like they came from the 1930s, Buick's design looked a lot more modern. It was also the ultimate evolution of Harley Earl's vision for Buick. Earl was in charge of GM's art and color section, the first modern automotive design studio. And in the late 30s, he created something called the Y Job. It was a beautiful, streamlined Buick. In fact, he later drove it regularly in his retirement. This 48 Buick Super takes Earl's concept through to its conclusion. It was both elegant and imposing. The Super slotted right in the middle of Buick's lineup above the smaller Special, but below the top-tier Roadmaster. Built on GM's B-body platform, it shared basic architecture with cars from Oldsmobile and Pontiac. Now, this close relationship was really important because it meant the Buick Super had that tried and true chassis together with Buick's unique straight-eight power plant, that refined interior. It had a reputation for smoothness and comfort. But it also had differences. For example, Buicks used a torque tube rear end that allowed for a coil-sprung rear, whereas most of the 1940s cars had old-school leaf springs. The result was a smoother ride. But what gives the 1948 Buick Super an extra layer of significance in its later life is in the hands of hot rodders and custom builders. That long hood, wide body, flowing curves, providing a perfect canvas for creativity. Customizers chopped the roof lines, they smoothed the fenders, they exaggerated the already bold proportions. A straight-eight engine often gave way to a V8, but the bones of the Super, its stance, its scale, its style, made it an icon of the post-war custom culture. Let's walk around and take a look at the styling of our 1948 Buick 8 Super, and we're going to start with this bold hood ornament up front. Looks like a gun sight almost. Technically, I think it's supposed to be aircraft going through a halo, but a lot of folks just call it the gun sight hood ornament. The other really bold thing that you see up front is that grille, those big, huge teeth coming out of there. A lot of hot rodders would use these for other cars over time, but this made a big statement. Also, that big, huge crest on the front, the Buick crest. Everybody knew when you were driving by just exactly what kind of car you had. I want to talk about the importance of the styling that came out in 1942 because it's an element that a lot of the cars in the GM world would incorporate over the next few years. Notice the way the hood comes down and flows down into this valley and back up onto the fender. A lot of the pre-war styles that were being built after World War II came down, almost had a 90-degree turn with the fender coming off there. This would flow like this. For example, in the 1949 Chevy, you see something very similar. In the 1948 Cadillac, you see something very similar. Of course, as it goes down, then it became more traditional, but that styling right there was very important. This is a fun little thing to point out. This chrome element is very important because this is how you open the hood. You pop that, there's one on each side. But the following year, this would disappear, and Buick would introduce something that would really become a symbol of the car brand for a long time, the Ventaports. Those circles on the side look like exhaust outlets, 3 for the Super, 4 for the Roadmaster. Down below, the only significant change between 47 and 48, adding the word Super. Notice this is the element I was talking about, the way the fender line flows all the way back through the door. In the post-war styling, this would become flatter. We call them slab styling because that was much more modern looking, so you didn't accentuate the fender all the way back. I love the wheel covers, call them wheel spats if you want. And there's so many fun design elements to this. For example, the exhaust. Steve Mugnante, my good buddy, likes to call the art of the exhaust, and look at the way this comes out. Almost has this War of the Worlds kind of look to it, that spacecraft look, with a reflector built into it. You got the stop signs, and you also got the reflector built into the Buick 8 symbol back there. And then we've got another reflector on the side of the car. I love that little element right there. Just everything's nice about this, the way you look at it in terms of its long, bold look. And remember, as I mentioned, there were 3 different Buick models in 1948. You can get the Special, you can get the Super, or you could get the Roadmaster. The Special had a 121-inch wheelbase. The Super had a 124-inch wheelbase, while the Roadmaster had a 129-inch wheelbase. Interestingly, the following year, in 1949, they would actually shorten the body just a little bit, but I think they kept the wheelbase just about the same. They did, in 1948, do something that gave this car a little bit lower stance, which is they went to a slightly lower profile tire, so it actually has a meaner look that looks like it really just means business as it's coming at you. But once again, this 1948 Buick Super really epitomized the Buick styling that created such a great look starting in 1942. All right, stepping into our museum car is a little more complicated than you normally get. That's because we've got a few things we got to fix. For example, the seat won't glide backwards properly, and can't get the top down because we're inside the museum. The battery is disconnected. But once inside, you do get a great feel for what the 1948 Buick was all about. It was all about comfort and refinement. Now, the Super was the mid-range, as I've mentioned. You had the Special, which was a step below, not quite as fancy. And of course, this was not as nice overall as you were going to get with the Roadmaster. Still, it had all the elements you want. I mean, first off, you had great seating for 6 people. And I think that's another reason this car was so popular for hot rodders, because, you know, while some people just wanted performance, other people wanted to go cruising with their friends, their buddies, their girls. So having seating for 6 was a great thing that you could do. If you look at this dashboard, this is very much a classic pre-war style, kind of that Art Deco look. I mean, beautifully done. They had something called a sonomatic radio. I'm not sure what sonomatic means, but supposedly it was very advanced for its day. The layout, very flat. In fact, the following year, in 1949, the speedometer would really have a much bolder look. Now it was really flatter right up against the dashboard. Steering wheel was changed for 1948. In 1947, it had 3 spokes, but 2 of the spokes were canted up here at an angle. For 1948, it had this horizontal bar that went across, and they retained this for 1949. Another important thing that came along in 1948 was the Dynaflow transmission, their automatic transmission. Our car here at the museum doesn't have it. It has the traditional manual. But the Dynaflow automatic transmission was pretty important. It actually evolved from a type of transmission that was used in a tank during World War II. In fact, it was so popular, they ended up having to make more of them than they had anticipated. It became a very, very successful and popular thing. The radio styling back then was really kind of Art Deco, very pre-war look. The following year it would go to more of a much more modern look, at least for the late 40s going into the 1950s. I also love over here where you've got the clock, and in place of where you would have the miles, you've got a little thing that says Buick. It's just a nice little touch. Once again, big, comfortable. Put this top down, and boy, you had yourself an absolutely beautiful cruising machine. All right, let's take a look at what's under the hood of our 1948 Buick Super. Now, I will tell you here at the museum, the hood was actually detached. We have to pull the whole thing off. Normally, you wouldn't be able to see it quite like this. What we have here is a legendary engine, the 248 cubic inch Fireball 8. Now, Buick had a history with the 8-cylinder engine going back to 1931. They replaced their 6-cylinder with this Fireball 8 back in 31, and really it was an overhead valve efficient machine. It was reliable. It was great. A lot of the other 8-cylinder engines at that point were using, side valve L-head engines, so that gave Buick a big advantage, and they ran with this for a long time. Now, I will point out that here in this Super, you were getting the 248 cubic inch version of the engine, made 115 horsepower. If you were to bump up to the Roadmaster, though, you had the option of a 322 cubic inch engine, much bigger, more horsepower. But for the Super, this was just fine. It had a great power curve, great torque curve that allowed this car to kind of get up and move smoothly, which is really what it's all about. I love the air cleaner in this, how it's off to the side, set below the carburetor level. The reason being is it didn't rise up above the hood. So this carburetor sits on top of the manifold, the air inlet right here to the air cleaner right there. Really an interesting design to make sure that the hood stays as low as possible. Now, this engine wasn't long for the production world. In 1954, Buick introduced its V8 Fireball 8, as it was officially known. These days, everybody just refers to it as the Nailhead. Buick sold about 230,000 cars in 1948, firmly establishing it as the #4 automaker in the United States. More than 100,000 of those were Supers, just like this one. 20,000 of them were the convertible, exactly like this one. But this was the beginning of the end for this styling. The next year, of course, they would go to the more slab-sided look that really was the defining look for the GM cars moving forward. Not quite as forward-thinking perhaps as Ford or even Hudson, but still more forward-looking. But this was that ultimate evolution of what the car had dreamed of being back in 1942. And as I mentioned, there's an awful lot of hot rodders over the years that just refuse to let this thing go. They love that bomb sight of the front. They love these big teeth. They love the flowing lines. Let them out, French the headlights, do all kinds of fun things. This was truly a canvas that they could paint their customization on. And a lot of those hot rodders took this 1948 styling and dragged it right into the future.